My name is Andre, and I have a best friend. His name is Richard, but to me, he was always Ricky. We met in the 5th grade. Back then, he was just the new kid in school, a bit clumsy, with braces on his teeth, and a dad who worked a lot. My dad worked a lot too. We connected over video games and splitting snacks during recess. A normal friendship, pure. It turns out his dad's working a lot was a little different from my dad's. His father was building an empire in the logistics sector, and as we grew up, the empire grew with us. In 8th grade, they moved to a bigger house. In high school, to a mansion in a gated community. In college, his family's name was already appearing in business magazines. And Ricky, well, he was still Ricky. At least, that's what I thought. Our friendship was living proof that different worlds could coexist. While he spent his vacations in Europe, I spent mine working as a waiter to pay for my design degree. When he got his first Porsche from his dad, I was celebrating being able to buy my first motorcycle, financed over 48 months. He was always generous. He'd invite me to parties, introduce me to his friends, always with an arm around my shoulder, saying, "This here is Andre, my brother, the nicest guy you'll ever meet." I felt special. I wasn't one of the hangers-on who started circling him when the smell of money got stronger. I was the real friend, the friend from the old days, his safe harbor in that world of appearances. At least, that was the story I told myself. Life went on. I graduated, started a small graphic design studio with 2 other friends. We hustle hard, pay the bills, dream of one day landing a big client. A normal life, with bills, with beers at the corner bar on Fridays, and with the worry of whether the money will last until the end of the month. It was on a rainy Tuesday, in the middle of a stressful job for a neighborhood bakery, that my phone rang. It was him. "Andre, my man! You busy?" His voice was always the same, full of an energy that only someone who's never had to worry about money possesses. "Never for you," I replied, happy to hear his voice. "So, here's the deal. Dad finally finished the beach house. And when I say beach house, read James Bond Villain's Lair." He laughed. "It's on a private peninsula in Angra. Insane stuff. And I'm throwing a barbecue next long weekend. But it's not a party, it's just the crew, the real ones. And you're the first on the list. You in?" My heart sped up. A weekend at a James Bond villain's house? All expenses paid? Just the real ones. The phrase echoed in my head. It was validation. The proof that, despite our different worlds, our brotherhood was still intact. "Ricky, are you crazy?" "Of course I'm in," I said, already picturing it. "It's a date then. I'll send you the details. A helicopter will pick you up Friday morning. Don't be late, hotshot," he joked and hung up. A helicopter. Me, Andre, the designer for Mr. Joe's Bakery, was going to ride in a helicopter. That week flew by. I told my parents, my friends from the studio. They were all happy for me. "You deserve it, Andre. You've always been a true friend to him." That's what they said, and I believed it. On Friday, I was at the heliport, feeling like an imposter with my old backpack and my old Navy clothes. The helicopter landed, and I got in. The trip was one of the most surreal things I've ever experienced. Seeing the city of Rio de Janeiro become small, flying over the Atlantic forest, and then the vast blue expanse of the Angra Sea. It was magical. The house was exactly as he described it. It wasn't a house, it was a sculpture of glass, concrete, and wood, perched over a private white sand beach. The infinity pool seemed to merge with the ocean. It was paradise. Ricky greeted me with a bear hug. "I told you you'd come, damn it! Welcome to paradise, brother!" The other guests, about 8 or 10 of them, were already there. They were all from the same circle. Heirs, playboys, models, beautiful and rich people who seemed to live in a J. Crew catalog. But they were all friendly. They offered me an imported beer, asked about my work with what seemed like genuine interest. Ricky introduced me to everyone in the same way. "This is Andre, my best friend, my brother, the only honest guy I know." The first 24 hours were a dream. I swam in the infinity pool, rode a jet ski, ate barbecue prepared by a private chef with meats I didn't even know existed. I drank expensive whiskeys and wines, and most importantly, I laughed. I laughed with Ricky, remembering our school stories, our childhood shenanigans. I felt like a part of that world. I felt that, despite everything, I belonged in that place. In that group, I was happy. The first crack in the dream appeared on Saturday night. We were all sitting around a bonfire on the beach. The sky was full of stars, the sound of the waves the perfect soundtrack. The mood was relaxed. One of Ricky's friends, a playboy named Teco, turned to me. "So, Andre," he said with a half-drunk smile. "Ricky always tells that story about when you guys took the wrong bus back from the Maracana Stadium and ended up in... what's the name of that neighborhood? Bangu? Tell us, man. He says it was hilarious." Ricky laughed loudly. "Holy crap, that's right. Tell them, Andre." The look of panic on your face was the best thing I've ever seen. I felt a little awkward. It was a funny story, yes, but it was a story from our private life, from our reality as broke teenagers. Telling it to a bunch of millionaires who had probably never set foot on a bus in their lives. It felt strange, but I didn't want to be a buzzkill. So, I told it. I told them about our desperation, about having to borrow money for the return fare. I forced a smile and put on a performance. And, as expected, they all laughed, roared with laughter. I felt like a comedian doing his set. After the laughter died down, Teco, the playboy, clapped Ricky on the back and said, in a tone he probably thought I wouldn't hear, "See, I told you it was a good idea to bring him. Gives the party some authenticity, right?" The word hung in the air. Authenticity. I wasn't a guest. I was an ingredient. I felt a chill, despite the heat from the fire. But I ignored it. It was the champagne, I thought. It was my working class insecurity speaking up. It was just a drunk joke. Of course it was. Ricky was my brother. He would never do that to me. I smiled, grabbed another beer, and continued to laugh at the jokes. But for the first time in that paradise, I felt completely alone. And the word authenticity kept echoing in my head, like the harbinger of an approaching storm. I woke up the next day with the sun streaming through the window of my room, which was bigger than my living room and kitchen combined. The sound of the waves was gentle, the bed ridiculously comfortable. For a moment, the happiness of the place returned. I felt like a king. But then, the word from the night before returned, like an unwanted echo. Authenticity. I shook my head, trying to swat it away. "Stop being paranoid, Andre," I said out loud to my reflection in the bathroom mirror. The guy was drunk. It was a bad joke. You're in paradise with your best friend. Enjoy the moment. I forced myself to believe it. I went down for breakfast. The table was a sight to behold. Exotic fruits I didn't even know the names of. Artisanal breads. Fresh juices of every color. Ricky and the others were already there, laughing, talking about the stock market, about a ski trip to Aspen, about the problems they were having with the import of a new yacht. I sat down, got some coffee, and tried to join the conversation. But I had nothing to say. What was I going to talk about? The new logo I designed for the bakery? The hassle of fixing the leak in my bathroom? For the first time in our friendship, the abyss between our worlds seemed insurmountable. I was a spectator in my own friend's life. During lunch, the feeling got worse. The chef served a fish that, according to Ricky, was only caught in a remote part of Japan and cost a fortune per kilo. As everyone praised the texture and delicate flavor, Teco, the same playboy from the night before, turned to me with a smirk. "So, Andre, this is good, right? But tell me, what would your mom do with a fish like this? I bet she'd make a nice stew with lots of cilantro and a side of pirão, wouldn't she?" Everyone at the table laughed. Not a mean laugh, an amused laugh, as if the idea was adorably quaint. And I, once again, found myself forced to play along. "For sure," I replied, forcing a smile. "My mom makes a pirão that's out of this world. She'd turn this rich people fish into real food." More laughter, and I felt myself shrink in my chair. With every joke, every comparison, they were pushing me into a box. The funny poor friend box. The weekend's exotic attraction. The afternoon continued in this vein. By the pool, while an Instagram model complained that the cell signal on the island was terrible, Ricky put me in the spotlight again. Guys, quiet down," he said, getting everyone's attention. "You have to hear the story of how Andre got fired from his first job. It was the most epic thing. Tell them, brother. The part about the tray of coccinhas." And there I went again. The circus monkey. I told the story of how, at 16, working as a waiter at a wedding, I tripped and dropped a tray with 200 coccinas in the middle of the dance floor. I told them about my desperation, the furious look from my boss. And they laughed until they cried. And the worst part is that I laughed along. I performed. I gestured. I did the voice of my old boss. I was humiliating myself, telling a story of a moment of pure mortification from my teens, in exchange for acceptance. In exchange for not being the boring guy who can't take a joke. And as they laughed, I saw Ricky's expression. He was genuinely happy, proud, like a TV producer whose comedy sketch was a ratings hit. I started to feel like a character, the authentic André. And I started to wonder, who was the real André? Where had he gone? Was he still back at the heliport, with his old backpack and his dignity intact? The moment of truth, the moment my denial was brutally murdered, came late that afternoon. I had drunk a little more than I should have, perhaps to numb the bad feeling growing inside me. I went inside the main house to use the restroom. The party continued outside, with electronic music playing in the background. The house was empty and quiet. As I was walking down a hallway, I passed a half-open door. It was Ricky's office. I heard voices inside, his voice and Teko's. They didn't know I was there. Curiosity got the better of me. I stopped and listened. "Man, your friend is a character," Teko was saying. "The story about the Coxina job was priceless. Everyone's loving it. Gabby even said he's funnier than a lot of stand-up comedians." I heard Ricky's laugh. A laugh that, without an audience, sounded different, colder, more calculated. "I told you," Ricky said, "he's the best. Guaranteed content. And the best part is, he does it for free, just for the friendship." I felt my stomach turn. Content. I was content. But the final stab was yet to come. "For free?" Teko said with a mocking tone. "Ricky, you're being an amateur. For the next party, we'll arrange a fee for him. I'll help you pay. Tell me, out of curiosity, how much do you think the authentic poor guy show is worth?" I stood there, frozen, outside the door. The world seemed to shift into slow motion. Every beat of the electronic music coming from the pool sounded like a hammer blow to my head. The authentic poor guy show. It wasn't a joke. It wasn't my imagination. It wasn't the champagne. It was a title, a position, a role they had given me. It was my part in their theater of luxury. I wasn't the friend. I wasn't the brother. I was the court jester. The only difference was, I didn't even know I was getting paid. And my payment was the illusion of a friendship that, in that exact moment, I discovered had never truly existed. The shock was so great, I couldn't feel anger. I just felt an emptiness. An emptiness the size of the ocean that stretched out before me. I didn't go back to the bonfire. I couldn't. The words I heard were like a poison spreading slowly through my veins. The authentic poor guy show. I stumbled back to my guest room, that luxury palace that now felt like a prison cell with a beautiful view. I closed the door and leaned against it, my heart hammering uncontrollably. Every moment of the weekend replayed in my head, but now with a different filter, a filter of humiliation. Every laugh, every innocent question about my life, every pat on the back from Ricky. It was all part of the show, my show. I was the only one who hadn't gotten the script. My normal life, my struggles, my teenage mishaps. To them, they weren't human experiences. They were anecdotes. They were content. I threw myself onto the bed that was softer than any cloud, but I felt like I was lying on rocks. Sleep didn't come. I spent the whole night with my eyes open, staring at the ceiling as my lifelong friendship was deconstructed, piece by piece, in my memory. I remembered the day I helped him study for a math test he was about to fail. I remembered the day I comforted him when his first girlfriend broke up with him. I remembered all the times he told me, "You're my brother, the only one I trust." Was it all lies? Or was it a truth he himself had forgotten, replaced by the convenience of having a friend who also served as a circus attraction? The sun rose, painting the sky with colors I couldn't appreciate. I felt drained, as if I'd been beaten up. I knew I couldn't keep pretending. I wasn't going to be able to stomach that breakfast. I needed to confront him. I needed to hear it from his own mouth. I waited. I watched the movement start from my window. The other guests waking up, heading to the pool, laughing. I waited for the right moment, and it came. I saw Ricky walk away from the group, a coffee cup in his hand, and go to an isolated balcony overlooking the sea. It was now or never. I left my room, my heart in my throat. I walked towards him. He had his back to me, looking at the horizon. "Ricky!" I called out, my voice lower than I intended. He turned with a smile. "Hey, sleepyhead. You missed the sunrise. It was spectacular." His smile died when he saw my face. "What's wrong, Andre? You look terrible. Did something happen?" "Something happened," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I heard you last night. Your conversation with Teko." The change in his face was subtle, but I saw it. A flash of panic in his eyes, quickly replaced by a mask of confusion. Conversation? What conversation? We were talking a lot of nonsense. We were drunk. "The conversation about the authentic poor guy show," I said, the phrase leaving a bitter taste in my mouth. He stared at me for a second, and then he did what the rich and powerful do best. He turned the tables. "Hold on," he said, his voice now tinged with hurt, with disappointment. "You were eavesdropping on my conversation, Andre. Come on, man. Make yourself at home, but damn, I thought we had more trust than that." I was speechless. Suddenly, I was the one in the wrong. I was the untrusting friend, the one listening behind doors. "I wasn't eavesdropping. I was walking past the hall and I heard you," I said, already on the defensive. "Dude, it was a joke," he said, running a hand through his hair. A gesture he always made when he was trying to convince someone of something. A stupid, drunk joke. "Teko's an ass, you know that. He says crap all the time. You're taking it way too seriously. Of course you're not a show. You're my brother." The words were the right one. The words a part of me desperately wanted to hear. But the tone was of someone trying to calm a child who heard a bad word. "It didn't sound like a joke, Ricky," I insisted, the pain in my voice evident. "The way you guys talked, guaranteed content. For free? For God's sake, Andre," he said, his voice now rising a little, impatient. "What do you want me to do? Pay you to be my friend? I bring you to paradise. Pay for a helicopter. Give you the best of everything because you're my best friend. And you get upset over a tasteless joke? Come on, I just wanted you to have fun, for the crew to like you. Your stories are good. They're funny. What's the problem with entertaining our friends?" He came closer and put his hands on my shoulders. The master of manipulation, gaslighting in its purest form. He looked me in the eyes with a rehearsed sincerity. "Look, my bad. For real. If it offended you, I apologize. Teko's an idiot. I'll even talk to him later. But don't let some stupid crap ruin our weekend, our time together. You know I love you, man. You're my brother. Always have been. Always will be." I stood there, paralyzed, confused, flooded by a wave of guilt he had just manufactured and injected into me. Was I overreacting? Was it really just a joke that my own insecurity had turned into a monster? I wanted so badly to believe it. I wanted so badly for our friendship to be real. It's okay," I mumbled, against my own intuition. "Forget it. That's the spirit," he said, the smile instantly returning to his face. He gave me a tight hug. "Now let's go get some real coffee and then take the boat out. It's a beautiful day." I accepted his apology, but something inside me had broken. Trust, that glass thread that takes years to build, had shattered, and there was no fixing it. The rest of the day was psychological torture. I went back to the group, forced to smile. I went on the boat trip. I swam, but I was acting. Every laugh, every conversation was a performance. And now, I felt their eyes on me differently. When Teko asked me another question about what it was like to ride a crowded bus, I smiled and answered, but inside, I could feel the poison of humiliation spreading. Paradise had become a gilded cage, and I was trapped in it, at least until the end of the weekend. The beauty of the place now seemed oppressive, the luxury an affront, and the friendship a well-rehearsed farce. I smiled, but inside, I was screaming. I needed proof. Ricky's apology had been too good, too smooth. But Teko's phrase, "We'll arrange a fee for him," wouldn't leave my head. It was too specific to be a drunk joke. That night, I couldn't sleep again. I waited. I waited until I heard the last laughs fade away, the last doors close. I waited until the whole house was plunged into a silence broken only by the sound of the waves. The house, Ricky's office, the proof, if it existed, would be there. With my heart pounding in my throat, I left my room. The house was dark. I tiptoed, like a thief, down the same hallway where my illusion had died the night before. I reached the office door. It was closed. I turned the handle. Locked. Of course it was. But I wasn't going to give up. I needed to know the truth that would free me from my own doubt. I looked around. Next to the door was a small ornamental plant. And under the pot, gleaming in the faint moonlight coming through a window, was a key, a spare key, so arrogant, so sure that no one would ever dare. I took the key. The metal was cold. I took a deep breath and put it in the lock. It was my last step into the abyss, and I was about to jump. The key was cold in my hand, a piece of metal that could open a door or open the gates of hell. My heart was beating so hard I could hear it in my ears, a drum drowning out the sound of the waves outside. The house was in absolute silence, a silence only money can buy. With a care I would normally reserve for handling a bomb, I inserted the key into the lock of Ricky's office. The click of the lock yielding sounded like a gunshot in the night's silence. I froze, waited. No alarm, no lights turned on. I opened the door slowly, an inch at a time. Darkness, and the smell. The smell of expensive leather, Cuban cigars, and air conditioning. The smell of power. I went in, closing the door behind me without a sound. I turned on my phone's flashlight. The small beam of light danced around the room, revealing a solid wood desk that looked like it had been carved from a single tree, a glass wall overlooking the dark sea, and shelves with books that looked like they had never been open. What was I looking for? I wasn't sure. A contract? A printed email? Anything that would prove the conversation I heard wasn't a drunk joke. Anything that would validate my pain and turn my paranoia into fact. I started with the desk. There were papers, but they were financial market reports, corporate merger proposals, things from a universe that wasn't mine. In a corner, a digital photo frame displayed a slideshow of pictures. Ricky skiing in St. Moritz, Ricky on a yacht in Monaco, Ricky next to a Formula One driver, and one photo of us from about 10 years ago, arm in arm and smiling, on a simple beach in Cabo Frio. That photo, amidst so much wealth and power, seemed like a bad joke, a museum piece from our extinct friendship. I went to his laptop, a slim, expensive machine. I opened it. It asked for a password. I tried the obvious things. His mother's name, his birth date, the name of his first dog. Nothing. Locked. Of course it was. My search would have to be analog. I rummaged through the drawers. Luxury pens, business cards, more business papers, nothing. I was starting to feel like an idiot. A thief going through his friend's things because of a misunderstood conversation. The doubt started to creep back in. Ricky's manipulative voice echoed in my head. You're taking it way too seriously, Andre. Was I? Had I made it all up? I was about to give up, to go back to my room and drown in my own confusion, when I saw it. On a shelf, among the leather-bound books, was a series of file folders. Thick, black leatherette folders with gold labels. Taxes 2023. Active contracts. The corporate events. And one, at the end, that caught my eye. Personal events. My heart leaped. I took the folder. It was heavy. I sat down in Ricky's presidential chair, which was more comfortable than my bed, and opened it on the desk. Inside, there were plastic dividers, each with the name of an event. Isabella's birthday, 2024. New Year's Eve, St. Barth's, 2023. And then I found it. The divider with the label, Angra Launch, July 2025. This was it. The dossier for my weekend in paradise. I started flipping through the pages. They were invoices, budgets, contracts. The reality of that weekend translated into numbers that made my head spin. 80,000 reais for the barbecue catering, 50,000 for drinks, 30,000 for the security team, the helicopter rental, the fee for the DJ who played by the pool. Their life was a spreadsheet of exorbitant costs. They were the costs of a show, of a production. I flipped through each page, my heart racing, looking for any mention at all, of Teko's comment. I found nothing about a fee. Maybe he was right. Maybe it was just a joke. I was about to close the folder, a mixture of relief and disappointment washing over me. I was just a paranoid fool after all. But then I saw it. The last page of the section. It was different from the others. It wasn't an invoice. It was a printed spreadsheet. At the top, the title, Strategic Event Planning, Angra 2025. It was a marketing document, an action plan. My eyes scanned the sections. Event objective. Strengthen ties with key investors in an informal setting. Desired atmosphere. Relaxed luxury. Exclusivity. Authenticity. The word. There it was again. Authenticity. My finger trembled as I followed the lines of the spreadsheet. And then I reached the final section. The section titled assets and resources. There was a list of everything. Asset, privileged location. Asset, exclusive gastronomy. Asset, nautical experiences. And then the last line. The line that stopped my heart. I read it once, twice. I had to use my phone's flashlight to make sure I wasn't misreading. But the words were there, printed in a cold, corporate font. Guest entertainment asset. Code, Angkor AS. Profile, longtime friend, humble origins. Function, generation of contrast narratives. Comic relief, reinforcement of host's authenticity and loyalty image. Cost, pro bono, relationship. ROI, high, social engagement and group cohesion. Anchor S. Andre S. I wasn't a guest. I was a guest entertainment asset. I wasn't a friend. I was a function. My life, my stories, my humble origins. It was all a tool, a reinforcement of the image of my brother. The cost was pro bono, for free, because my payment was the friendship I thought I had, and the return on investment was high. The humiliation was so deep, so absolute, that I didn't feel like screaming. I felt like throwing up. It was worse than I had imagined. It wasn't a joke. It was a strategy, a line on a business spreadsheet. I was a product. With my hands trembling with rage and pain, I took out my phone. I took a clear picture of that page. The proof, my ticket to freedom from this farce. And in the exact moment the phone's flash went off by accident, making a subtle click, I heard it. A sound in the hallway, the sound of a floorboard creaking under someone's weight. I froze. Someone was awake. Someone was coming. With a panic I'd never felt in my life, I shoved the papers back into the folder, threw the folder onto the shelf, ran to the door, locked it from the outside, slid the key back under the pot, and bolted down the dark hallway towards my room. As I was reaching my door, I saw a light turn on at the end of the hall. The door to Ricky's room opened. I threw myself into my room and closed the door silently, a second before he could see me. Leaning against the door, my heart trying to beat its way out of my chest, I looked at my phone's screen. At the picture of the spreadsheet, the image was there, sharp, cruel, the irrefutable proof of my humiliation. The dream was dead. The friendship was a lie. The question was no longer, is it true? The question that burned in my mind, as I heard the footsteps of my friend in the hallway, was just one. What am I going to do with this? I spent the rest of the night locked in my room, staring at the photo of that spreadsheet on my phone. The image glowed in the dark. A digital sentence. Entertainment asset. Function. Generation of contrast narratives. Cost. Pro bono. Every word was a nail in the coffin of my friendship with Richard. The pain of betrayal was immense. But slowly, as the hours passed, the pain began to give way to something else. A cold clarity. Icy. I finally understood the rules of the game. I wasn't a friend invited to a party. I was an actor hired for a show, and my payment was the illusion that I belonged in that world. The next morning, the last day in paradise, I woke up different. The anguish was gone. The desperation had been replaced by a purpose. I left the room and joined the group for breakfast. Ricky looked at me, a little warily, perhaps expecting to see the remnants of my frustration from the day before. I smiled at him, the most genuine, relaxed smile of the entire weekend. "Morning, brother. What a day, huh? What are we doing today?" He seemed relieved, and the show went on. Only this time, I was no longer a reluctant actor. I was the protagonist, aware of my role and willing to give the audience what it wanted. On the speedboat, I started telling stories myself. I took my humble life and turned it into a series of perfectly rehearsed jokes. I told them about the struggle of sharing a 2-bedroom apartment with 3 other friends in college. I told them about my first car, a Beetle that broke down every week. I painted myself as the character they wanted, the simple, nice guy who won at life just by being friends with the great Richard Montero. And they loved it. The laughter was louder, the pats on the back, stronger. Ricky looked at me with a pride I now understood. The pride of an owner watching his prize-winning thoroughbred perform perfectly. I was giving them exactly what they wanted, the authenticity their money couldn't buy, but that it could rent for a weekend. I played the game better than they could ever have expected, and inside, I felt nothing. No pain, no anger. Just a cold, empty void and a strange sense of power. The power of knowing the truth and using it as a mask. The time to leave arrived. The helicopter landed on the same heliport where I had arrived with eyes full of dreams. While the other guests said their goodbyes, Ricky pulled me aside. "Man, what a weekend," he said, with a grin from ear to ear. "It was the best one ever. For real. Your presence made all the difference, brother. Everyone loved you." "Glad you guys had fun," I replied, my tone perfectly neutral. "Look," he said, now with a slightly more serious, almost conspiratorial air. He took a thick envelope from the back pocket of his shorts. A white, unmarked envelope. "I know we talked about that stupid stuff, and it's all good, but this is for you." He held the envelope out to me. "It's a little something to help out, so you don't have to worry about the studio bills for a while. A gift for the company." The scene seemed to freeze. There it was, the moment of truth, the payment for the show. My chance to have a fit of dignity, to throw the money in his face, to scream, to save my pride. The movie ending everyone would expect. I looked at the envelope in his hand. Then I looked deep into Ricky's eyes. I didn't see malice there. I just saw a rich, spoiled kid who genuinely didn't understand what he had done wrong. To him, this was normal. It was like tipping the valet, a payment for a service well rendered. And with that final clarity, I made my decision. I extended my hand. I took the thick envelope. I felt the weight of the $100 bills inside. I didn't look away. I stared into his eyes, without anger, without sadness, with the gaze of a professional closing a deal. "Thanks," I said, my voice firm. I put the envelope in my backpack pocket. He smiled, relieved. "Don't mention it, brother. We're in this together. You know it," I replied. I took a step towards the helicopter, then stopped and looked at him over my shoulder. "Let me know about the next event." I got into the helicopter without looking back. The blades began to spin, and the house, the beach, that fake paradise grew smaller below. I opened the envelope. There were stacks of cash. More than I made in a year. I didn't feel joy, nor did I feel shame. I just felt the weight of my choice. In that helicopter, with the smell of new money in the air, I understood something. My friendship with Ricky wasn't over. It had just changed its nature. It had become a business. I could have refused the envelope, yelled, saved my pride. But pride doesn't pay the studio rent. Pride doesn't get you out of a jam. Ricky thought he had bought me, that I was his court jester. But the truth is, in that moment, I decided that if it was going to be a show, I would be my own manager. And my product was the humiliation he and his friends were willing to pay to feel. Our friendship didn't die. I just started charging for it.